Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of the People Progressing podcast. And today I'm really excited. I have a leadership expert, leadership guru, I like to call him, Martin VanDerSchouw, on with us today. He's written a couple books. He speaks all over the world. He just helps businesses and people with leadership and in culture building and so forth. And that's right up my alley too. So we're going to have a great conversation today. Martin, thank you so much for coming on. I've been really looking forward to having you on and talking leadership and giving some people some inspiration on their leadership journey. So I kind of like start this off by just asking where you grew up. What'd you like to do as a kid? Some of the things that influenced you, sports or band or whatever you did, just things that kind of made Martin who he is.
Yeah. Well, I grew up for the most part in northern Colorado, Longmont, Fort Collins, that area, where my family is originally from. And I'm a fourth generation native Coloradan. So there aren't very many of us around anymore,
I am.
yourself included,
Yeah.
as well. But I was blessed to be very involved as a kid with a lot of different sports. My parents were divorced, so my mother made sure I was pretty active in scouting. I was an Eagle Scout in the Boy Scout program, and then through high school was involved in football until I only went to a 3-year high school here in Colorado. I had spent a few years just prior to that in upstate Illinois, a little town called Quincy, right across the river from Hannibal, Missouri, where Mark Twain was from.
Yeah.
Um, and was always very involved with basketball. But my senior year got very involved with cross country. Pretty much the only year I really ran cross country. And it turned out I was a better runner than I was definitely a football player, and was able to also run track. And at the end of the day, that's what paid for my college at the University of Kansas, where I was able to be a Jayhawk. Earned 2 bachelor's degrees and a master's in something called game theory, and was able to run all through college and then move on and spend most of my career in the finance industry. So I'm an old banker.
And your leadership journey started early being an Eagle Scout. What was involved in becoming an Eagle Scout? I know you have to do a bunch of projects and so forth, but it's not easy to get that.
No, it was a lot of fun actually, and was able to actually do a number of adventures. The troop I was involved with did a lot of high adventures, so we worked and were able to go to the Northern Wisconsin National Canoe Base, and then of course the most famous place in scouting is always to be able to go to the Philmont Scout Ranch, and we did a 10, 12-day hike, covered both in a canoe up in northern Wisconsin, and then backpacking more than 50 miles both ways. And so that gets you an additional award. But at each level of scouting, there's always a bunch of different projects, and you're able to work through whatever your interests are. Mine were always on the kind of camping and wilderness survival side. So when I got a little bit older, I was actually able to go up to Scout Ranch here in northern Colorado called Ben de la Tour, where I taught pioneering and wilderness survival as well when I was 16, 17 years of age. So that was a fantastic experience in terms of at a real young age. Figuring out a little bit about what
Yeah.
leadership really entailed.
Well, and really what you have to do with that is you have to lead yourself first, right? When you're trying to
Absolutely.
survive. Yeah. Lead yourself first
Yeah,
and then,
it's a lot about the first thing is self-control.
right.
Being able to look around and figure out what really is going on. And of course, one of my favorite things, both as a participant and then as somebody teaching it, every Thursday night during summer camp, when you had your group of scouts all trying to get their wilderness survival merit badge, there was the quote unquote nature hike, and you would take them out for a few miles. And Ben de la Tour was a fantastic facility because it bordered the Rocky Mountain National Forest. And so you had
Okay.
access to all the forest land as well. And so we would take scouts out ways, and we had told them it was just a basic nature hike. And then a couple miles into the hike, we'd say, okay, here you go. This is where you're staying tonight. Figure it out. What are you going to do? And we limited what they could bring with them on the hike a little bit. So they had the ability to start a fire. They had a pocket knife with them and a compass. And so they were going to have to figure out how they were going to survive the night. And so that was always one of my favorite times
Yeah.
because you really learned a lot about kids. Some kids immediately hit the panic button, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Others were like, this is vacation, getting away from it a bit. But that ability to kind of look around and enjoy where you're at and not hit the panic button first, real important skill.
Yeah. It's a mindset, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. So your leadership journey, it started early. It continued through sports, I'm sure, and then to the University of Kansas, where you were on the track team and so forth. How much of your leadership skills and team building did you get through that process of being a collegiate athlete?
I would say a lot more than I thought at the time. I was blessed to have an amazing man as our head coach, and I was his part of his very last complete recruiting class that went all 4 years at
Okay.
KU before he retired. A gentleman by the name of Bob Timmons, and he's in the Hall of Fame in terms of track and field. He had coached somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 or 30 Olympians along the way, probably best known for his work as both a high school and a college coach of Jim Ryan, the first American to break the 4 minute mile,
Yeah.
and an Olympic gold medalist and world champion. And then later in life, he became a U.S. congressman from the state of Kansas. But we called him Timmy, and Timmy was an ex-Marine Corps gunnery sergeant, drill sergeant. And he was tough as nails, I'll tell you. And I swore until the day he passed away that I thought he hated my guts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always wondered why the heck he recruited me because he was tough. And he set standards and had expectations. I'm blessed. My daughter is following in my footsteps. She's a junior in college in California, and just like me, she's a 400 and 800 meter runner. And I've been able to through the years share some stories with her about what to and what not to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I definitely was more on the side of what not to do a lot of times. But I often told my daughter that, in my college career, and this is the late 1980s, and the rules were a lot different back then. I only drank once in college.
Yeah.
Uh, and she's like, "No, Dad, that can't be possible. You went to parties and did things." And he was like, "Yeah, I did. But I drank once and came to practice the next day, and my coach called it the brown bottle flu." And we had to run, I had to run 800s at sub 245 until I was literally crawling on the track. And he never said a word. He never got on me, never yelled. He had this subtle way of being able to get his message across and teach you what you really needed to do to take care of your business and set your priorities. And if you didn't do that, there were pretty serious impacts.
Yeah. Consequences.
Yeah, and learning that it really was a job.
Right.
They were paying for your school, and they had some expectations because of that. And so learning to be dedicated, learning to understand that if I didn't want it, there were a whole lot of guys out there that would be more than happy to take my spot.
Yeah.
And they would be hungry. I don't know if you have seen any of the at tweets or Instagram posts lately, I'm always amused. One of the trends I've seen lately are these young people who are incredibly frustrated working 9 to 5 jobs, and they can't believe, by the time they commute and get back at home at the end of the night, and they're not even really working any overtime, but they don't have any time to do anything
Yeah. Yeah.
but go to sleep and get ready for the next day. It's awful. And it's like, yeah, imagine if you're working 80 or 100 hours a week and you're trying to
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
that. And I think sometimes we've lost that dedication and understanding. There are other people out there that would be grateful for what we have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's self-awareness, you've touched on so many things I want to get into. The first thing I want to get into is this. You mentioned your college coach and your daughter running track now and telling her stories and everything else. And you mentioned something I thought was really, really intriguing to me. You said, I learned how to do some things and I learned how not to do things. How important is it for us to take all of those things and learn from it? You
Oh,
mentioned
it's huge, isn't it? One of the things I talk to a lot of senior executives about these days, they're incredibly frustrated along the same lines we were just talking
yeah,
about, with people that they're hiring these days to do jobs, and their dedication, and how quickly they learn something or don't. And one of the things I always talk to them about is to think about the amount of time and money that you have invested when you bring on somebody to your organization. It's incredibly
hmm
costly.
hmm
And you need to think long and hard when you get rid of somebody. I have been, unfortunately, in many cases in my career, the person that's been called into the organization as a consultant, to mentor people out. I jokingly would say they're going to be great somewhere, just not with you.
yeah,
Um, and the problem is that we are so quick sometimes to pull the trigger and just decide somebody's not going to work out, that we fail to respect the amount of time and money that we've already put into that person. And yeah, they've made some mistakes. But the idea is hopefully they're not repeating those mistakes. And if I can get somebody that is constantly learning, and yeah, maybe they're making some mistakes along the way. Big question I have to those leaders is that person, number one, are you coaching that person up? Are you
there you go.
investing in that person? Number two, are they repeating the same mistake? If someone's repeating the same mistake, I always say that's either a can't or a won't. If they're can'ts, that's my job. I need to coach those people up. I need to develop them so they can. If they won't, they're making a conscious choice, and that's when I need to move on from that person. But if I have a can't and I can just invest some time, some energy, and they're not repeating the same mistakes, why would I heck would I ever want to get rid of that person? Because I'm going to have to go through the same hiccups, the same learning with the next person I bring in,
Yeah, yeah,
right? And so now I'm tripling my cost, in terms of developing my people. I would much rather have somebody who's got some rough edges on them and has gone to the school of hard knocks a little bit, and made some mistakes. And so one of the questions I often ask people when I interview them is, tell me about a couple of the biggest mistakes you've ever made in your career.
great question.
Let's talk about those mistakes.
Yeah,
The easy stuff is tell me about what you've gotten right. Everybody wants to brag on that. Let's talk about the stuff you've gotten wrong.
yeah. And gosh, so many powerful things there. The can or won't is awesome. The other thing I was thinking about when you were talking about that was every leader, especially in business, or I'll just say it, every leader needs to look at everything as an opportunity instead of an obligation. when someone makes a mistake, what an opportunity to coach and teach and lead and make that
Absolutely.
person grow and progress instead of looking at that person as they can't do it. And
Well, and
I don't have time. I
it's a
don't have
hard
time.
choice though, right?
Right.
It is really a hard choice because there are people in the world that are making a conscious choice that they don't want to do something,
Right. They won't. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm all on board with those people should be coached out of the organization. They're just not willing to engage and participate. But if I find somebody and they're giving me their level best effort, and they're failing, that's on me as a leader.
Right.
And now it's on me to be a better servant leader, to lift that person up, um, and to help them develop the skills that they need. One of the things I've seen over the years, I've had a number of occasions where I've been asked to coach an executive, and the executive is the one that is in trouble in the organization. And we're talking about the senior most leadership of the organization has said this is kind of the last chance they get. They're either going to make some changes or they're not going to be part of this organization any longer. And it's an incredibly difficult situation because number one, my experience has been is on most occasions, those people aren't stupid. They they kind of know where they're at a little
Yeah.
bit. They
Yeah.
may be in denial about it, but there's a little voice inside of them telling them, they're in trouble.
Right.
And a lot of times it's due to the way they've chosen to treat others, that the way we speak to other people um, conveys a message that somehow they're lesser, they are a failure, they're unable to deliver value in whatever capacity. Um, and I'm all that in a bag of chips.
Yeah.
And so you should, why can't you be more like me?
Yeah.
And one of the hardest things in an organization is to understand organizations have conflict. Conflict is not a bad thing. How we choose to deal with conflict is what makes it good or bad. So that's one thing. Secondly, what kind of true coach am I? One of the things that you find if you and I know you have an incredible career and have been amazing as a baseball coach. You've had a similar experience where at the end of the day, you could have done some things significantly better than some of your players. Um, but they don't let you on the field any longer.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and
That's one of the hardest things, to be
it
honest with
is,
you.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And so one of my favorite questions, I still coach a lot of basketball and some running, mostly basketball these days with either high schoolers or middle schoolers. And my first question when I have a kid coming off the floor is always, what did you see?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I can't help the kid if I don't understand what they were seeing when they
Right.
made a particular choice. And it
Right.
really is about choice.
Yeah.
And right now I'm struggling with an incredibly gifted kid, point guard. The kid knows the game of ball backwards, forwards, and sideways, and is so athletically gifted that it's off the charts. He should be a D1 athlete. He's got a problem though. His head gets in the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he overthinks things so much. He's so afraid of making a mistake that it's like he's a step behind all of a sudden. And when you get him to just free up and play the game, all of a sudden you see these episodes, maybe it's only 2 or 3 minutes where magic happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, how did you ever make that pass? How did you ever see that? And it's just a flow. And I think that flow exists in the world of business. One of the things when I'm teaching a class, so 1 week a month, I get to teach a class in Agile Development. And one of the things we regularly talk about is how most people have had an experience somewhere in their life where they've been a part of an unbelievably gifted team. And, maybe at the time you didn't realize what an incredibly special moment it was,
Yeah.
that it was like everything was perfectly coming together. And then, years later, you look back on it and you're like, wow, kind of missed the boat there. A lot of the success I've had today is because of what was happening in that moment, whether it's accolades or learning that you had. And we don't cherish those moments very often.
No.
We're all on to the next step.
Yeah.
What's your next gig going to be? What's your next promotion going to be? And not cherishing the moment that right now there's something special happening here. And
Celebrate
I
it.
think, yeah, and I think most of us you've probably had a number of baseball teams over the years where, you look at the guys on the field and the amount of talent they have is off the charts. And you're like, these guys are crazy good,
Yeah.
yet somehow they don't win as much as they should.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Happens all the time. And I think you said a couple
Right.
things there. It's like your player. And what's really fascinating to me, and I believe this with all my heart, that when we're talking here, you can translate anything we're talking about, either business wise or athletic wise, and vice versa, and put an athletic leadership position into a business and so forth. I don't know if that makes sense, but
I think you're right. I think, especially these days with young people, I think sports is one of the places that people learn leadership skills very early in life.
yeah, and they learn how to overcome adversity. They learn how to be part of a team. They learn all those different things. And you're talking about your player that has all the ability, but his head takes over. And I used to ask those players all the time, I would tell them what's happening here is your body is phenomenal, but your head is plain. Let your
Oh,
body
what a great way to put it.
just let your body go, just let it go. But one of the things that I'm seeing, and what I saw towards the end of my athletic coaching career, was how kids had a harder time, or people had a harder time um, facing adversity
They do.
and getting over adversity and so forth. So I called it CPC. We called it coach it, practice it, and challenge it. So I can sit there and coach that kid how to dribble a basketball. I can sit there and help him practice it and give him drills so he can practice over and over and over. But until I challenge that skill, the light bulb's not going to go on. And I say the same thing in business. If you're not challenging your people and putting them in a challenging position, they will not get the light bulb to turn on. And what I mean by that is this: when I challenge somebody I lead, I am telling them that I believe in them. I am telling them that I believe that they can handle this, that they can do this. And then if they're struggling with the challenge, that's where I can coach. That's the part of leadership that's great. That's where I can go in and coach and help and teach and do those things. You got me going here. And those are the things that I think, the one thing that I think is missing in sports and in business is not the C, the coaching, not the P, the practicing. It's the C, the challenging.
Well,
We
and
are afraid to challenge people nowadays.
Well, a few years ago, they had a fantastic, I thought it was hysterically funny TV commercial. It was from one of the insurance companies. And the family is getting into the car, and the dad looks at the trophy and, see it's a participation trophy, and rips off the plaque on it that says participation and says, we don't do
Yeah,
first place,
yeah,
right? We didn't
yeah,
lose a game.
yeah.
And I laughed at it so hard because these days we are scared to death to allow people to fail.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and I'm sorry, but we learn more from failure than we do from success.
If we
And
do it
today
right.
we
Yeah.
see so many kids that, they go through school and they get perfect grades all the way through school. And then they get to college and all of a sudden they struggle with the class and they no longer have perfect grades and their life is over.
Right.
They don't know how to handle failure. I didn't do something perfect. I didn't get the participation trophy. Well, guess what? In the real world, that's not going to happen.
Right.
You're going to have to struggle. And one of the things I think we as adults, as leaders, have to do a better job of is it's kind of the role of being a great parent, I think. And the way I describe it is, as a parent, you've got to make some judgments. When the kid goes out and skins their knee because they fall off their bike, no big deal. Let's put a band-aid on it. Whatever you were doing that was stupid, don't do that again. But we want to make sure the kid wears a helmet so they don't crack their skull open. There's a difference between skinning your knee and
Yeah.
cracking your skull open. Um, and that's, as the leader, whether we're talking about a parent or the leader of an organization, that's where my judgment comes in. My experience comes in is to distinguish between those, to allow my people to fail.
Yeah.
I'm not going to handhold you. I'm going to expect you to do this and do your very best, whatever it is we're talking about. And I know that along the way, you're going to make some mistakes. Let's openly talk about those mistakes. Let's learn from those mistakes. And so one of the things you see a lot of times with poor leaders is they will chastise in front of the whole group somebody who makes a mistake.
Yeah.
As opposed to, which just guarantees, what you just do when you do that is you guarantee that no one else is going to share a mistake that they make. Because I don't want to be called out in front of the whole group and chastised. So I'm not going to share any of that information, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to hide every mistake I have underneath the rug, sweep them underneath the rug. And that means every single person in the organization has to make the exact same mistake for us to get any kind of organizational learning. It's ridiculous. It's incredibly expensive. We can't afford that. And so, I think if you watch, for example, SpaceX is a wonderful example of this. How many rockets has Elon Musk and SpaceX blown up?
Yeah.
Whoops, that didn't work. 2 weeks later, they're putting another rocket up.
Yeah.
And they're going to learn something else.
Right.
It's a lot about what I spend most of my time trying to teach people are these leadership concepts and techniques, where we talk about failing fast and succeeding even faster, because we need to make it okay to make small mistakes. This notion, though, of making big mistakes, that's what we're doing. It's a free for all. We need to avoid that.
Yeah.
Right? And so we need to be able to do both sides, avoid the really big mistakes, SpaceX. I don't want you blowing up a rocket, right over a populated area.
Yeah.
That'd be really bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't want that. But at your launch facility, you blow up a rocket, you have to pour some more concrete. You have to build another rocket. Oh, well, right.
Yeah. Because we'll be better in the end for it.
Exactly. And then we're going to talk to each other about how this happened. Why did this happen?
Right.
And so that gets you into talking about, for example, the metrics that you use to hold people accountable. And one of the things that you'll see along these lines is organizations become, I call it being metric happy. They'll have 10, 20, 30 different metrics measuring everything under the sun. And I'm a trained statistician by formal education. My master's in something called game theory. So I love statistics. I can't do math. I can do statistics. And I'm a Six Sigma black belt and all this stuff, all about statistics and looking at the math of this stuff. And what everybody worth their salt in the industry will tell you is if you're really focusing in on more than 2 or 3 measures, you got too many.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because people don't know what your employees don't know what to focus in on.
Right. Yeah.
So what needs to happen is pick 2 or 3 things that drive the behavior you really want out of your employees, right?
Yeah.
And so, as a baseball coach, what leads to someone being a good hitter?
Yeah. Well, seeing the ball clearly for me, it's the number one thing is your eyes have to stay still. They have to stay quiet so you can see the ball. And then you got to be ready to hit when the ball's coming.
So
Those are the two biggest things.
if you have a player, that's 6'3" and 240 pounds and can just knock the snot out of a baseball, but never swings the bat, it never comes off his shoulder, right?
Ooh.
It's great that you've got all this talent, but you're never taking a swing. And if you don't take a cut, you miss 100% of the
Yeah,
balls you
you're
don't
never
swing
gonna
at,
you'll
right?
never succeed. Yeah.
Right. And so simple measure,
Right. Yeah.
take swings. How
Yeah.
many swings did you take per at bat? Right.
Yeah.
And with everything that you look at, there's 1 or 2 things that drive behavior. And the problem we get a lot of times is we pick all kinds of metrics, and somehow it's often possible to achieve the metric, but not have the desired end state.
Mhm.
Right. And
Yeah.
so
No, no doubt.
we don't ask the hard question, is that a good metric? Right. The metric has to lead to the desired outcome.
Right. Right.
Right. And so
Growth.
we're all metric happy these days as
Yeah.
leaders.
And I ask my leaders all the time, Martin. I ask them, are you a data leader or are you a people leader? And what's going to give you the data that you want is the people. So
That's right.
how much are you spending on your people to develop them, to help them grow, to help them progress? And how much is that a part of your culture? When you talked about growing and progressing and all that, I personally don't think anybody should ever have a performance review again. I think they can have a review, but I think they should change the word performance to growth. And every meeting you have, you should put the word growth in front of it. We're having another growth meeting. And now all of a sudden, everyone in my organization knows that I am committed to you growing and progressing. And I'm committed to be there as your leader to help you grow and progress through the mistakes like you talked about, through all those things. And again, we go back to can't and won't. I love that. Okay. And we have to do what's best for our team. We do what's best for the whole. So you get rid of the won'ts. You have a bunch of can'ts who can now because you've coached them. And everything is, when I walk into that building every morning, I know it's about me growing. Now, all of a sudden, what is your company going to do?
The one thing I would say about that is, I take a slightly different tact. The way I just tell people, as leaders, you need to be looking at your performance reviews is none of your people should ever be surprised by anything
No.
you say in a performance review.
Right.
That they should be able to write their own performance review and say almost word for word exactly what you're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That you've been coaching them so often by your actions, that they have a clear understanding of where their weaknesses and strengths lie.
No doubt. No doubt.
The problem I have is far too often, and you can call it a growth meeting, you can call it, we talk about stand-ups in what I do quite a bit, all kinds of different titles for things. And I jokingly say nothing new has been invented in 10,000 years. We repackage, we rebrand, rename things. If you wait long enough, ideas that were around 20, 30 years ago come back in vogue over and over again. So people like me can sell our books. It's kind of the way of the world. Everybody's got to make a buck a little bit with this stuff. The problem with it is far too often the titles that we give things don't match our actions.
Yeah,
And so
I agree.
one of the things I think is really, really important is to get away from a title of things and focus in on the core behaviors that you're doing every single day. I spend a lot of times doing what's called crisis management. So I'm the guy they call in when they've got some really big effort in an organization. They've spent lots and lots of money, been spending months on it, and it's not going well. And we've spent so much money that you can't just throw it away and say, it's okay. We really need this effort to be successful. And to me, it's about inertia and getting initial movement of people. And far too often, what I found over the years is we all get into habits, both good and bad. One of my assistant coaches, he has this wonderful phrase. I love it, and he says, "Practice does not make perfect." Far too often, how many times have you heard practice makes perfect? Practice, we need to practice more. We need to practice. And you can talk about sports, you can talk about business, whatever you want to discuss. Practice makes perfect. And he says, no, practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent.
Yeah, I say that all the time. All the time.
And
Practice makes
so,
permanence
yeah.
all the
So
time.
good behavior, bad behavior.
Mm-hmm.
You keep practicing and doing things the same way, you're going to get the same results.
Right.
Right. And the problem we all have, I don't know about you. One of the things I keep talking to myself about is getting back to getting into shape a little bit, start running again, get into shape. I keep wanting to do that. And I've got a whole gym in my house. I've got two kids, a 16-year-old and a 20-year-old, and they're very serious athletes. And so they're always in our weight room. We've got our own high-end treadmill, the whole ball of wax, free weights, you name it. We got it. It's all here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. All I have to do is change clothes, put the shoes on, and go downstairs.
Yeah.
Not that big a deal.
Yeah.
And there's time, right? There's time in the day if I so chose to get my butt down there and make it happen. Somehow there's always something that gets in the way
Yeah.
because my morning process, right, is kind of set in the way I do things. And most of us are like that.
Yeah.
We do things in a pattern. We have our set way that we like things to be. If you look at your desk right now, I will be willing to bet you've got some stuff sitting on your desk that is pretty much always sitting in the same spot. And you can tell if someone comes in and mucks around with your desk, somebody came in here and moved my stuff, right? And it just throws you off a little bit. We're all like that.
Yeah.
And if I need to make some kind of organizational change, it's really hard to do because I have this bias against change. Most of us like to do things the way we like to do things.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I'm a change agent, if I'm a leader coming into an organization, we see this all the time when I work with my folks in the military. Every 2 years, a new commander comes in to every single command that's out there, and they rotate pretty religiously every max, sometimes 3 years in a command. And the first thing that happens with one of these new senior commanders is they need to change something because they need to make their mark in the organization. What am I going to do that's going to make this different? And if you talk to the people who actually do the work, and these days the vast majority of them are civilian contractors, what you find is these people have learned over the years, if they just keep their head down for the first couple of months, they can keep doing things the way they've always done things.
Yeah.
No change really happens.
Right. Yeah.
And organizations all over the world are like that. They struggle it's easy to say, well, this is the problem out there. Detecting a problem, super easy for most people to do. This is why things aren't happening the way they should. Great. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And how are you going to get people to um, really engage with making that change?
It's so interesting. I want to go into this real quick, Martin, and kind of
Please.
not change too much direction here, but you started out in your business career in banking and so forth. How did you transition that into being this leadership coach now, where you're going out and coaching people and helping people with their leadership journey?
For me, it was freak accident, to
Okay.
be honest with you. I was blessed to be able to lead some incredible teams. We deployed, this is back in the late 1990s, the first real time credit decisioning engine available anywhere on the internet. That was able to take all three major credit bureaus along with a property valuation and use some decision gates and logic to decide who got money and who didn't, which was a pretty cool thing. Today we call it rocket mortgage. Back then, nobody else had come up with this way of doing this on the internet. Based on that, I was able to become and got quite a bit of press off of that. It generated it cost us about $150,000 to implement, generated half a trillion, that's with the T, dollars in revenue. So
Wow.
you do the ROI on that one, and
Yeah.
that's a pretty
Wow.
good ROI.
Yeah.
Um, and so I became the chief technology officer for a large interactive agency in Silicon Valley. And so I was involved with a lot of the early dot coms that were out there in a lot of different ways. And that opportunity was based on my knowledge of statistics and being able to do some of the same kinds of analyses of your customer base that we did in banking. That
Okay.
what they were trying to do is figure out which ads needed to be served to which customer, and how do we track that stuff, and how do we get conversion rates and make money off of the advertising that they're selling on the internet. Today that's so automated. Google and all these companies being have mastered LinkedIn, how to do that kind of stuff. They're amazing in it. But this was the early days and we were creating some of the early ideas. But one of the things that happened is I was blessed. The smartest man I ever met was my father-in-law. And guy was had both an undergraduate and a master's in engineering from Cal Berkeley, and then did his PhD work in computer sciences at a little place called MIT.
Oh, wow.
So pretty bright guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he kept telling me over and over again that I needed to learn something about project management. And I kept telling him, yeah, whatever. I'm 28, 29 years old. I'm young. I got the world figured out. Look at all these fancy promotions and everything. I don't need this stuff. And he kept going, yeah, you might want to look at this and learn something about what's going on. Little did I know, and I, came to me a little bit later, some research was starting to come out from a guy by the name of Jim Johnson, and he owns an organization called the Standish Group, based in the Bay Area, and he publishes still to this year, every year, some data called the Chaos Chronicles, and looks at the performance of projects throughout all kinds of organizations, thousands upon thousands of projects. And you can become part of what he calls the Chaos University for like $5,000-$10,000 a year. He makes bank off of selling his data at this point. And what he was finding, the numbers were just shocking. About You were going to spend about 200% of what you originally forecast. It was going to take you more than twice as long to get any project done. And oh, by the way, in industry, what he said is only 16% of all projects were deemed successful.
Yeah.
So it was going to cost you more than twice as much, take more than twice as long. And oh, by the way, almost, 8 out of 10 projects were going to be deemed outright failures.
Yeah. You don't
Great,
have a
sign me up.
Yeah.
Right. And Larry, my father-in-law, knew this stuff. And he already knew that in any organization, and I don't care what business you're in, there are only two things going on. You're either dealing with operations where you're trying to keep the wheels on the bus turning, and it's all about consistency and predictability. It's about everybody doing the same thing. Same way it's like working at the Acme widget factory. Got to make sure you make every single widget the exact same way.
Mm-hmm.
And we got lots of processes in the real world that are like that. And real jobs, where you want that to happen consistently, predictably, the exact same way from one person to the next. Your accounts payable, your accounts receivable organizations are examples of that kind of thing. But then there's all those new things, the new products, the new services, the new processes that your organization needs to be doing.
Yeah.
Those are all projects. You can call them change. You can call them new initiatives. You can call them, whatever you want. They're projects.
Yeah.
Right. And so what he was teaching me, and I didn't know it at the time, was that's kind of there are lots and lots of people who are truly gifted at the operations stuff. Got that pretty well figured out. There aren't very many people that can help organizations deliver that new stuff. And those are the entrepreneurs. Those are the guys looking for building the better mousetrap.
Yeah.
Out there in the world. And it's incredibly stressful. It burns people out. We make demands on people that are outrageous in that business. We mismanage those things beyond any, reasonable expectation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so if you can bring something to the table to help people do those things better, you could make a career out of that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I had a few very large organizations, starting with the bank I had left, had called me up and said, "Hey, we're having some trouble with this technology that you've created. We want to do some add-ons and add some, stuff to this. Would you be willing to come back and consult?" Of course, you say yes to that when they offer you twice the money. And a very large oil company called me about that same time and kind of started my own organization off of those first few companies. But it was all about figuring out how do you lead people in a way to be able to build the better mousetrap.
Keep them progressing.
Yeah. And, it's about delivering business value.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we talk about all these different processes and tools and techniques and ideas. And at the end of the day, you talk to any senior leader, they don't care what you call it. It's, do you deliver business value? And I always add on an extra piece to it. Do you deliver business value without killing your people?
Right.
Right. So can I take care of my people and make them excited to come to work tomorrow? At the same time, we're delivering incredible value to our customer base.
I love that.
It's about delighting your customers that we've got to do. One of the questions we talk about a lot is, and I always challenge people based here in Denver. I used to spend about 70% of my time on the road. You probably in your career kind of done some of the same thing. And when you fly out of Denver, you can kind of, for years, you could fly United or you could fly United, whichever one works better for you kind of deal. Now Southwest has it as a hub, and there are a number of other airlines, but still probably like 2/3 of all the flights a day out of DIA are United Airlines. And every year, one of the things I do is I take a group of coaches with me to a KU basketball game, just kind of a fellowship thing, kind of a bonding. And it's a different group I take. It kind of moves around with different people every year. And a couple of years ago, I was taking three other guys with me. There were four of us. And one of the guys was a strong advocate of Southwest Airlines. Man, he did everything on Southwest. And I'm 6'2", about 210 pounds. So I'm not a little guy, but I'm also not that big, right? I'm the smallest of this group. One of the guys is 6'4", about 235, 240. Another guy's just over 6 foot, but pushing 3 bills. And the third guy is about, 6'2", 6'3", and again, about 2.5. And so I'm the small guy of this group. And so we go to the airport and I'm complaining about having to do the cattle car line on Southwest Airlines because I'm used to flying United, right? And in United, I've had status forever. I've, did my million miles. So I've got lifetime status with them. And so I'm always upgraded on my flights and I always have an assigned seat and they know exactly, what my favorite drink is. It's waiting for me when I get on the air, the whole thing. And I'm complaining about having to do the cattle car line on Southwest. And so we board the plane. And of course, we're in one of the later groups. And so we head to the back of the plane. And my two friends, one takes a window and the other one takes an aisle, leaving, what one guy 6'4", 240, the other guy 3 bills, and the middle seat is the only one left.
Oh,
and I'm having to sit between them. And my point is simply this. They got us to Kansas City fine. We were on time. They were super friendly. The stewardesses told jokes, with the safety demo that they're famous for, made us all laugh. They gave us acceptable service, I think you would say. And they were about 50 to 75 bucks cheaper than United would have been for a flight that was within 20 minutes. My wife, the good accountant, who holds me to a pretty tight leash, is always, we go on United. Why? Because they always delight us. They go beyond the expectation of the minimum of what is acceptable service.
Right.
When all you do is deliver a level of service that your customer expects, that meets the standard that they were looking for something. When the next opportunity comes along, your customer is always going to shop you because there's 10 other people out there that could provide the same level of acceptable service.
Right.
And so the driver will be price.
Right.
Lowest price wins. But if you delight your customers and you go above and beyond the expectations, they'll give on price to truly be delighted every single time. How often do we delight our customers versus just deliver an acceptable product?
Right. Just, yeah. And that's being unique.
Yes.
I try to.
What's your differentiator, right?
Yeah. I tell my business people all the time, I want you to be unique in your industry. I want you to be the one that sets the standard. And, it's so interesting you talk about that. We talk about a lot of the same things. It's really kind of mind-boggling to me. I have to ask this question. I wrote a book called The 3 Ps. By the way, we've already gone almost an hour.
Yeah, we are pretty close.
And it's called Finding Your Purpose, Perspective, and Passion. So I asked my guest about those. What's your purpose in life, Martin?
For me, it's real simple. Building leaders. That's what I do. No one's going to remember me, but they are going to remember some of the great things people I interact with do. And hopefully someday they're going to remember what my kids do in their life as well. So, what am I all about? Being a servant leader. I believe we're called on this earth to leave it better than what we found it.
Yeah. And what's your passion in life?
Really, I would say probably young people. I love the ability to and the privilege to engage with people who are starting out their careers or still in school and helping them find their own answers.
Yeah.
You know, you if I spoon feed you, you're not going to get it,
Right.
right? But if I can just kind of help you find your own way a little bit with it, um, uh, you'll remember those lessons. You'll get more value out of it than anything I could spoon feed you and tell you how to do things.
Yeah. And I agree with that. Somebody asked me yesterday, what do you think about the Rangers? After they won the World Series, and they had all those losses last year and all those things. And I said, here's the deal. They now have a leader leading them that is allowing them to be their best when their best is needed. And he's created a culture where being your best when your best is needed is okay, which means he's created a culture to let you fail. He's created a culture that he's going to still believe in you. He's created a culture where he's going to keep coaching you, and he's going to coach you through that, because realistically, a leader's job is to help people be their best when their best is needed. How can I do
And
that for you? How can I help you
both
be
of those teams, the Diamondbacks and the
same thing?
Rangers,
Yeah, same
should
thing.
not have been in that World Series.
No.
If you look at pure talent, Astros should have won.
Yeah.
Pure talent, uh, position by position, the Astros were the best team. And you look every year, how much money do the Dodgers spend on their roster?
Yeah.
Far and away, they've got the best roster in baseball. And the Yankees, another team famous for this. But how often do the Yankees let us down? By not, these lesser teams are somehow winning it all. And what's the magic there? Because it's not talent. They've got less talent, but somehow they're getting the job done.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you're talking about. It's leadership. It's creating an environment where everybody can succeed, and it's where you care about the guy in the foxhole next to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um and so I'm not just doing it for me any longer. I actually really do care about my teammates and what's going on around me,
And
and we don't do enough of that.
no, and I say this all the time. I was fortunate to be part of 5 state championship teams as a coach. And I tell people this all the time. The number one differential in all of those teams compared to the other ones was that the players on those teams genuinely were happy when their teammate did something well.
That's right.
They were not jealous of them. They were not mad because, well, he plays the same position and he just had a home run, so I'm not going to play ever. They were the first ones out of the dugout, giving each other high fives and supporting each other, caring about each other. And I think that's important, and it's hard to get these days. It really is.
Well, you can't force it either,
No,
right? As a
no,
coach, I
no.
can't just make you like your teammates,
Right.
right? And we've all been, as coaches, you've also seen those teams where at the beginning of the year, it's not going to go well because these guys don't like each other,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're not competing for each other. They're here for themselves and whatever they can get out of it. Um, and I'm sorry, you're going to fail every single time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's magic.
And it
It
doesn't matter if
somehow
it's
is.
athletics or business.
It's true. You are absolutely right.
Does not matter. It's about being a part of a team that really wants each other to do well, cares for each other, supports each other, and does those things. Last question, your perspective on life. So I think your purpose and your passion kind of equal each other. They kind of support each other, help each other.
Yep.
What holds it together, the glue that holds that together, is your perspective. And there's things coming at us on a daily basis. You kind of mentioned this earlier when we were talking leadership, that try to take us out of our purpose and passion. The noise, you're having a bad month with your sales or whatever it is. What is the perspective that you have that holds your purpose and passion together?
Really, really a simple idea. I am a true believer that far too often we make life transactional. That talk about business, talk about these teams, you know, um, use a baseball metaphor again. We look at a traditional double play, right? Shortstop, second, first. It's a couple of pretty simple throws, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah,
How often have you seen it get screwed up?
yeah. A lot.
That's a transaction. I field the ball. I'm going to flip it to the second baseman. They're going to make the turn to first. It's a simple transaction, right? One person to another. But if that shortstop somehow is a little off with that throw to second, the second baseman can't make that tag on the bag and then make his turn pivot fast enough to get the guy at first. He's going to misfire, and I'm sure you've seen it
Oh yeah,
hundreds of times.
yeah, yeah.
Make the turn and they overthrow or they misfire to first base, right? Because that throw in many cases in baseball was blind, right? I'm guessing, I've done this 1,000 times or 10,000 times, but I'm doing it blind. And I'm assuming the first baseman, gloves out, is there waiting, right? And I got a spot in my head where it is. We do the same thing in the business world. We make business transactional. And I am a firm believer that we are better served when we return to kind of a small town mentality where I do business with people I care about and I enjoy doing business with.
There you go.
That my expectation is that I'm going to take care of you because we're going to do business for the next 10, 20, 30 years together. And again, if I delight my customers, if I go beyond what they expect, and I really care about who you are, and I think of you not as a customer, not as a business transaction, I think of you as a friend and somebody I care about. At the end of the day, I'm going to have a customer for life.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. And so it's a small town mentality. It is, I've been told it's simplistic, that it is unreasonable to expect in large organizations that we can operate that way,
yeah.
where you can do business on a handshake, but it works.
Build relationships.
Yeah, it is. Do business with your friends and do everything in your power because they are your friends to never let them down
Yeah,
because of that. If
powerful.
you're right, if you do that, you will be 1,000 times more successful. One of the things we see these days, not getting into politics or anything, but one of the things that has caused Donald Trump a lot of problems over the years is he has this reputation for not taking care of his subcontractors in the building and trades industry. And he's been sued like 20 or 30 different times by his subs for non-payment, right? Well, you get that reputation and all of a sudden it just opens up a huge can of worms that's just completely unnecessary. That even
Yeah,
when you do things right, you're having to carry all that baggage with you
right, right.
that is unfair and it's unreasonable in many cases. It's still with you.
Yeah,
And so make a better choice. How do I want to do business today? Every single day you get to make a choice, and every single day you'll get to make some decisions that show how that choice is put into action,
right.
right?
And
It's
you're in control of the choice.
you are. And even in the largest organization, you're doing those transactions every single day. I'm, you know, I'm fielding the ball. I'm trying to make the turn. I've got teammates around me who are expecting me to deliver things. And it takes all of us doing our job and sometimes going a little bit above and beyond to deliver fantastic business results.
Yeah.
But when we do that way, you know when it's special.
All right. Yeah. Oh, it's awesome.
Right?
Yeah. You want to go to work.
I mean, you've seen those double plays
Yeah.
in your career as a coach, and the team comes off, with a double play that closed out an ending that you desperately needed because there was a guy at third, you're up one, and you pull off a double play, and the team, comes off the field to close out that inning, and they're high-fiving each other and they're celebrating that double play because it changed the direction of the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We do it in business every single day.
Yeah. Man, this has been powerful. I think you and I could probably go on for about 3 hours. It's been over an hour already. It feels like we just got started. Martin, I want to thank you. How can people get a hold of you? I know you got 2 books, Flavor of the Month and Common Sense Leader. The Common Sense Leader, is that out yet?
The Common Sense Leader is coming out first of the year. I also have a book on principles of project management.
Okay.
My publisher in London, Book Boon, which is in paperback. So that's available as well today. But they can contact me always on LinkedIn. My name, Martin VanDerSchouw, is probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. And, I look forward to our next conversation. This has been awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Martin, so much. And everyone out there, again, you just got a master class in leadership. Hopefully that helps you keep progressing in your leadership journey too. And thank you so much for all of you listening, and keep sharing this, and do whatever you do with podcasts. I just do it to inspire people and have people on that can inspire people, and I love doing it. So thank you so much for all of you listening. And like I always say, keep progressing. Have a great day. Thank you so much.